In the year 1888, the Weatherall brothers discovered Cliff Palace. They were looking for a stray cow up what we now call Cliff Canyon, and they look off into the left and they see Cliff Palace. And they're immediately amazed. Now there's one thing that we need to focus on. Rediscovered. They didn't discover it, they rediscovered it. You see, when the ancestral Pueblos left in 1300, the Utes, Navajo, and Arapaho moved into the area in the 1500s. And they, of course, did their own exploration of the area, and they discovered these cliff dwellings. They knew of what was in the area. They just didn't tell anyone. The Weatheralls did, though. And of course, when the Weatheralls came here, there was no one here. So, we need to rewind the clock and sort of discuss why they left. And, well, Michael. The park is 111 years old, and you cannot tell me exactly why they left the area? Why are we going on this tour? Well, I'll explain. Don't get out the pitchforks and the torches yet. Please, let me explain. So we have 4 hypotheses as to why they left the area. 4 strong ones. A, drought. The area is known as a dry climate. There is no steady source of water, which means both water and so that when the time, in which case there's not enough rain, which means there wouldn't be not enough food, they'd be able to survive in the area. From the primary agriculture crops in the area are corn, bean, and squash, and they're farming on the mesa tops. They've been farming on the mesa tops from around 550 AD to 1300. They only started moving into the cliff dwellings around 1150 AD to about 1300, and that's when they left. So what does drought have anything to do about this area? From 1200 to 1300, it was a bad century. There were 8 years of exceptionally good harvest, 19 years of exceptionally bad harvest, and the rest of the years were with the majority being ant, which means they're unable to continuously resupply their stores of food and water. They're continuously having to dip into them to stay alive, essentially, to stay afloat, so they wouldn't starve or die of thirst. And so you have that issue. Then you have the issue of deforestation, both natural and man-made. The 2 primary species of trees in the area are pinyon pine, which we saw up top, and Utah juniper right here. These 2 trees are used for cooking, for heating, and for construction. And these trees take 4 centuries to grow back from acorn to full maturity. So a tree cut down in 800 AD would grow back in 1200 AD. A tree cut down in 1300 AD would grow back in 1700 AD. And that's assuming everything else goes well. Like, and the conditions are conducive for the tree. And part of one of the conditions is that while it's a seedling, it needs shade. It cannot tolerate the heat as a seedling. And even while it's full grown, or at least let's say a century old, fire kills it. A little bit of fire, it's dead. It cannot tolerate fire. And the primary growing season is from about the end of June through July and August. And with these rains come lightning. Just yesterday, we had our first monsoon storm, and a number of trees were struck by lightning, and a fire started. Of course, we put it out very quickly, but that just proves to you that there are fires that start very quickly, and without anyone to put them out, they can easily spread. Since 1930, 70% of the park has burned. And so basically, Mother Nature is cleansing the area. However, trees that are trying to grow back, if they get any fire nearby, it kills them. So the trees aren't growing back as fast as you would expect. Another reason as to why they left the area: overhunting. They are supplementing their diet with mule deer, elk, and bighorn sheep. We know this because we look at the trash piles. Just think, what would our trash piles say about us a few centuries on after we disappear? We'd probably say quite a bit. We look at it and we see them at the bottom, but not at the top, which tells us really multiple things. A, either they became vegetarian, which we can say they didn't become vegetarian because we show you the small game. Well, maybe the animals decided to leave the area. The last century of occupation was a bad century after all, and that's possible. But it also could be overhunting as well. So it's really, I say overhunting, it's really a combination of leaving the area, bad environment, and overhunting. And then there's the cultural reason, reason number 4. They believe, the ancestral Pueblos believe that they're promised a land of balance, both externally and internally. And with all these conditions going on, they say, yeah, we can't stay here. And so they picked up and left. I mean, they left everything else behind in these sites. So Cliff Palace, which was constructed between 1260 and 1280, which means by 1300 when they left, this area still had the new car smell, on it. It still was filled with lots of stuff. Here. In 1888, when the Weatherall brothers rediscovered Cliff Palace, they immediately start telling everyone. And everyone comes to the site. And this is incredibly important, because when it's sort of like making a jigsaw puzzle. Any of y'all ever put together a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle? Or maybe 500-piece? It's a very difficult and a long process, isn't it? But you can rest easy because you've got the box to tell you just what that picture is going to look like. We don't have that. We don't have the cheat sheet. We have no box, and we have no idea how many pieces are here. So when we come to the area, we know that we've lost a great deal many of the puzzle pieces from the get-go. When the ancestral powers picked up and left the area, they took some of the puzzle pieces with them. You see, when they left the area, yes, they are still the same people that once lived here, but they have sort of changed. It's sort of like moving from Alaska to Florida. It's sort of that kind of a stream. You're still the same people that harken back to say, we lived in Alaska, this is how we did it, these are our traditions. But yet, they had to adapt to a bit of a new environment. No longer were they living in cliff dwellings, so the buildings are different. So there's a few pieces missing. Then there's the fact that the intervening time between when the ancestral Pumice left and when the Anglo-Americans rediscovered the area is 588 years, which means time is taking more pieces away because the structures are beginning to deteriorate without constant maintenance. And then when people do arrive, the miners, they take gold. They don't take gold. They want gold. They take their dynamite and start blowing holes in walls because they're looking for the lost gold of the Aztec Empire, of Montezuma. This is an outpost of the Aztec Empire, and they are dead wrong. Like, completely and utterly wrong. This isn't an outpost of the Aztec Empire. Completely different civilization. But they don't know that. And so they take their dynamite and are trying to blow holes. And they do significant damage to the area. So that's more puzzle pieces gone. Then we have the second group of people who come. They bring their food and sugary drinks. And they're eating in the sites themselves. There's a famous picture, or I think is famous, of a family eating Cliff Palace. They're sitting on the walls, sitting on the ledges. They have their cans of food they're opening up and just open on the ledge. They have their little teacup, a little tea kettle, and they're, of course, drinking tea. So many things are going wrong. First and foremost, they're eating and drinking, which means that rodents will be attracted. Then there's the fact that they have kids, which means they're going to scrounge around looking for stuff. That's more damage, more puzzle pieces gone. Just like I would when coming to a place. And so they find that hand-sculpted, hand-decorated pot, minimum 588 years old, minimum. And they take it and they move it away. And this continues for year upon year upon year. In 1891, the situation changes though. It becomes a little more aware of the situation. In 1891, Gustav Nordenskjöld of Sweden arrives. He is a baron. He's looking for the cure for tuberculosis, which is basically tells us that he's wealthy, that he can spend the time to actually travel the world, especially he's fairly young. He won't find it. He'll die at the age of 26, but he will leave his mark on the Mesa Verde area. He will give a refreshing course to the Weatheralls, who are self-taught archaeologists based on European techniques, the latest and greatest techniques. And then he's also going to find items he wants to take with him back to Sweden. He's not taking one item, not two. He'll go to the Durango Railroad and he will present so much stuff to them that he will fill 3 boxcars with stuff that he has. Now, the Durango Railroad takes one look and says, something's off. They tell on him, the federal government, and the deputy federal marshal arrests him for thievery of these ancient ruins. Now, there's one itty-bitty, tiny elephant, big elephant, white elephant in the room problem. What's the problem? No law against it, correct. And because there's no law against it, it means as quickly as the charges are leveled, as quickly as they are dropped. Nordenskjöld is able to take the largest and only collection of Mesa Verde artifacts out of the country. Now, this sets a fervor in Colorado and throughout the nation. You see, it's one thing for an American to be stealing from America, but it's another thing for a foreigner to be stealing from America. You see, now that the act of a foreigner taking American stuff turns America into next China, next India, Egypt, Greece. All are being looted of their cultural and historical treasures to grace some large hall back in Europe or a museum. And even now, Greece and Egypt are having hard times getting their stuff back because, well, it was legally acquired. So, what do? Well, 1894, Virginia McClurg founds the Cliff Dwellers Association. Now, there are really two things you need to know about Virginia McClurg. A, she's a woman in a state that allows women the right to vote, which means they have the political power to have a say in the state legislature, in the House of Representative elections, and then since you indirectly the Senate elections going to the Senate. Two, she's an influential woman who married an influential man who has political power. And so she can wield that in her push to try to obtain federal protection for the Mesa Verde area. Now, when she says federal protection, she's saying make Mesa Verde a national park. Now, there are three issues that need to be discussed. First, Congress has yet to really define what it means to be a national park. Two, Mesa Verde the effort to preserve Mesa Verde is based not on its cultural or natural beauty, not on its natural or scenic beauty, but on its cultural heritage. Never before had that been done before. So if Mesa Verde is actually going to become a national park, it would be the first national park passed for its cultural heritage, not its natural scenic beauty. And three, ever heard the highest and best use of the land debate? Is that a yes? No. All right, look at it this way. You have 10 acres of land. Beautiful land, beautiful. Environmentalists say this is worth protecting. Let's set aside, no one can do anything. The industry says, no, this would be prime cattle land. Let us graze our cattle on it. Or, there is rich mining deposits on this land. Let us mine it. And then they start going in the pros and cons. And this sort of the push and pull has been going on since our very first park to the latest monument that's been created. So Yellowstone was created not for its, because it was billed as worthless. Utterly worthless. Nowadays, no one would even consider removing Yellowstone's status as a national park. But this issue continues on to today from Yellowstone all the way to Bears Ears, and this issue will continue up until the end of time. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to where the other group was, right over there. So when we get up and move, I'd ask that y'all would wait for the people over here to pass, because y'all are going to go this way. I don't want y'all climbing this way, it's a safety issue. So, up and at 'em, we're moving on. Area. There would be about 100, 120 people here, and they would stay in between 21 to 23 kivas. You think, Michael, again, like earlier, how do you not know if they're 21 to 23 kivas? Have you forgotten? No, I haven't forgotten. It's just, this debate between historians, archaeologists, anthropologists, depending on their perspectives, on if the last two kivas are actually kivas or something else. So there's a minimum of 21, maximum of 23 for the 100, 120 people living here. Now, earlier, I asked you, who owns history? Well, here's my answer. History is owned by those willing to tell the story. Because stories, the history that is not told, is forgotten. And as a member of the National Park Service, you, the American public, have charged me, and others like me, and throughout all these other divisions, your interpretation, administration, maintenance, cultural resource, to preserve and protect the area, and to provide for the enjoyment, to make it accessible for y'all to come. But that's not the end of y'all's responsibility. Y'all have a responsibility to ensure that we're doing the job we are supposed to be doing. That we have the resources and are capable of doing our job.